The gateway to Mars is now open for business as Flight 12 is drawing closer with each passing day now. Booster 20 is nearing completion at record pace, and Ship 39 static fire may be right around the corner. It's been a couple of weeks, I know, but you guys know the drill. From Florida's Space Coast to South Texas, we have all of this coming up and more on this week's Starship Update. At one point, Starbase's launch site had a full Gateway to Mars sign on display right off of Highway 4, though it didn't stick around for very long, lasting only 6 months before launch site construction had it removed. But at long last, it has finally returned to the launch site, and hopefully to stay this time. We first spotted the individual letters around the area not long ago and have since been moved into place. SpaceX installed the letters on the Pad 2 perimeter wall in next to no time, mind you, only taking 3 days to fully install them. While they're now mounted in place, we haven't seen them lit up like we have in the past. Yet. Let's now dive into Pad 2 itself. Swinging by the ship quick disconnect arm, get it? The SQD arm swings out of the way at launch? Okay, you get it. This week, we observed work on the shoulder side of the arm of the SQD. Most notably, we saw bits of steel added to the shoulder's lower side, adding reinforcements, likely allowing it to get out of the way quicker during launch. Allowing the SQD arm to swing out of the way quicker means that it has a lesser chance of taking any damage from Super Heavy's 33 Raptor engines at liftoff, meaning that refurbishment times are reduced and the whole system, as a result, is more reusable and able to support a quicker launch cadence. That's the overall goal of Pad 2 here, mind you. The work on the SQD itself looks to be complete. We'll have to keep an eye on when the scaffolding is removed. Staying with the tower, work on the facility's new roof is progressing well. As we covered in previous Starship updates, this new roof structure has been lifted onto the tower itself, and SpaceX is hard at work welding it into place. The roof's purpose is to protect the topmost section of the tower from the exhaust flow of ship's 3 Raptor 3 engines during a catch and recovery attempt. Remember, ship will be approaching from behind the tower itself and will reorient itself to slide in between the chopsticks for a catch. But this isn't the only protection or shielding that the tower will have. Panels lining the top segment's exterior are also being installed as well. SpaceX is working to encase and protect critical hardware here, including part of the drawworks. It's kind of important if they want to maintain use of the chopsticks. We don't want them to fail or fall to the ground after all. Pad 2 has been receiving attention elsewhere as well. Now that Booster 19 has returned to Megabay 1 for engine installation, scaffolding has returned to the orbital launch mount around the 2 booster quick disconnects, or BQDs. Looking more closely, you can see something on top. These are proximity sensors, and they are used to align the aft of the booster on the orbital launch mount, making sure that it doesn't hit anything that it's not supposed to. Gone are the days of booster alignment pins formerly used at Pad 1. Speaking of which, remember those things? When the booster was lowered onto the mount, these pins would grab the booster and, as the name implies, align the booster with its clamps inside the launch mount itself. This was more or less a bandit of a fix of a system, as SpaceX had to remove them from the launch mount and subsequently weld the holes for its cable shut to prevent damage during launch, especially during the initial pitchover. Fast forward after launch, SpaceX had to cut the hole open again and reinstall the alignment pins for the next booster in line. In short, it was a lot of work keeping the booster from hitting the inner ring of the launch mount, and not exactly a streamlined process to support a rapid launch cadence. Pad 1 was not it. Placing the proximity sensor on the single booster quick disconnect at Pad 1 wouldn't be very useful, as you would only have data from a singular point of reference. Not exactly helpful for finer adjustments left or right, rotationally, etc. And moving these sensors inside the launch mount would be kind of useless, because the booster would already need to be lowered for them to have any accurate readings, which kind of defeats the purpose. Luckily, however, Pad 2's redesigned launch mount supports 2 BQDs, one for LOX and one for liquid methane. So now you have 2 separate vantage points to work with. They can measure distance from each sensor, calculate necessary adjustments, and then carry on with lowering the booster into place. Curiously though, they are currently installed on top of the BQDs, which isn't exactly in a safe zone during launches or landings, perhaps hindering rapid reusability. To remedy that, SpaceX is currently installing them inside the BQD hoods, providing necessary protection when the time comes. Sticking with the orbital launch mount, the alignment hemispheres were removed. We aren't entirely sure why right now, but SpaceX could have seen some data from the hold-down arm tests that weren't satisfactory, though that is just speculation. The alignment hemispheres could have been replaced, or there could have been modifications made to them or where they attach to. Either way, we did see their eventual reinstallation, indicating that whatever work they needed to do was complete. Further retraction tests of the hold-down arm soon followed, presumably to verify changes. The deluge system has also been active in the last couple of weeks, with one test in particular occurring around the launch of SLS in Artemis 2. Side note, you can watch the current status of Orion and the crew of Artemis 2 on our 10-day, 24-hour stream, right here on YouTube. But during that deluge test, the chopsticks also came to life with noticeable movement. The actuators moving the sticks have been replaced from a hydraulic-based system to an electric system, showing off some incredible speed for the first time since the swap. And Pad 2 testing doesn't stop there. The tower vent was actively venting as well. This indicates activity on the ship side of the tank farm, something we haven't seen to this point, at least to this magnitude. It's pretty neat to see venting from the tower now, as this is the first time we've actually seen this at Pad 2. However, it will take some time before we see Ship 39 at the launch site, as both Booster 19 and Ship 39 still have to conduct their static fire test campaigns before then. Booster Transport Stand number 3 was the newest addition to the transport stand fleet being assembled at Sanchez. To test it, SpaceX transported it to the launch site, finishing at Pad 2's vehicle staging area, just like we've seen with the others. Soon after, the booster transport stand was taken back to Sanchez once testing was complete. While Pad 2 is still receiving its finishing touches for Flight 12, Pad 1 is still in its version 3 remodeling phase, as we've seen SpaceX crews cutting GSE lines, going to the ship quick disconnect arm, and preparing for its removal in favor of the much improved design as we have seen over at Pad 2. Preparing the new methane tanks for the tank farm is still ongoing. Despite the plethora of activity that we have witnessed in recent months, there is still much left to do before supporting a full vehicle stack in combination with the newly built air separation unit across the street. Venting from the methane side of the tank farm was visible this week. This could be due to the new transfer of methane between old and new methane tanks, but we're not 100% sure on that. Speaking of plumbing and venting, the air separation unit is also receiving additional plumbing, connecting the various modules needed to create the necessary commodities for launch day operations. Moving on over to the production site in future vehicles, Booster 20's liquid oxygen tank has rolled out to Megabay 1 for installation. This is the last step before stacking of the LOX tank section is complete, only missing the aft section of the booster. However, Booster 20 didn't have to wait long for that either, as it was rolled into Megabay 1 just 2 days later, placing all section of its LOX tank inside of Megabay 1. Nice. Ship 40 is still inside of Megabay 2, receiving its TPS tiles as well. Scaffolding is gradually being removed as the TPS looks to be in a much more complete state and the major gaps from before have been filled. That being said though, completing the TPS isn't a required step for Ship 40 to perform its cryo testing campaign, as we have seen multiple ships performing their cryo tests and even static fires with an unfinished heat shield. Though that may be a thing of the past as SpaceX moves towards version 3 ship operations. So we'll have to see how other ships do. Work on the Gigabay is also continuing as SpaceX crews are installing additional cladding on the outside wall enclosing the structure. As the 4th level of Gigabay is being finished up, the 5th level has also begun construction. Let's bring it home to the Space Coast for a minute, because it has been both a quiet and extremely loud couple of weeks here. On March 25th, we spotted a work platform moving up the orbital launch tower columns at Launch Complex 39A. Although we don't know the exact reason for doing this, it's unique considering the location and timing respective to the pad's readiness state. Fast forward a week and a half, on April 2nd, our camera spotted what looks to be the middle section of a booster quick disconnect hood for the orbital launch mount. This is what protects the ground support equipment during launch, acting as a direct shield from Super Heavy's Raptor engines. The following day, we saw what looked to be a chopstick actuator being installed. To our eyes, this looks to be the same type of actuator used at Pad 2. This is a pretty important milestone because for quite some time now, the chopsticks had to be moved manually using equipment on the ground whenever it was needed. The installation of these actuators ensures they can also begin testing chopstick movement very soon. It's kind of important they get on this considering they're essential for full stack operations as well as booster and ship recoveries. Now, I feel like there's a tiger in the room as opposed to an elephant because you know tigers are orange, but I say that because Pad 39A's neighbor is Pad 39B and its inhabitant is, or was, SLS and the Artemis 2 mission. Because at this point, that sucker launched 5 days ago? Oh my God, 5 days ago. Now, I know this is a Starship update, but there is still a major connection point here with Starship. This mission, Artemis 2, is currently on the way to the moon where it will complete a flyby before returning to Earth. They can't land yet because the program doesn't have a lander. Not yet. One of the landers in question for Artemis is SpaceX's Human Landing System, or HLS for short. Though we haven't seen any obvious HLS components in Starbase yet, we're sure it's somewhere. If not, then Artemis 3 may have to wait until we do. Artemis 3 will consist of an Orion to HLS lander docking test, which does in fact require a lander. So we're hoping to see some hardware very soon. Now, I won't go into what Artemis 2 truly means to us here because this is of course a Starship update, but our teams on the ground here on the Space Coast and in Starbase have been been on their A game to have the best possible images in the shop for y'all. Go ahead and take a look for yourself and pick your favorite vehicle or launch to display anywhere you'd like on either aluminum or fine art poster stock. All available at shop.nasaspaceflight.com. It's time for our McGregor Minute, or 2 in this case. It's been a couple of weeks. Since we didn't post last week, we now have 2 weeks worth of tests to cover. So sit back and fasten your seatbelts because it is about to get very busy at SpaceX's premier engine testing facility in Central Texas. For some general statistics, we spotted 19 Raptor 3s with, you guessed it, a new record holder. We also spotted a Raptor that was confirmed to be in Starbase, but more on that in a second. Now, how many tests do you guys think they had? Go ahead and take a guess. 10, 15, 20? Try 40. Of those, the longest duration burn lasted 348 seconds on the Raptor vertical stand. To keep it short, the main highlights for Raptor spotted here were Raptor 3 RVAC SN77, Raptor 3 SN87, and Raptor 3 SN140. Jeez Louise. Up first, RVAC SN77 was spotted on March 24th. I can say this is a highlight for the simple fact that it's a vacuum optimized variant, which we don't see too often as much as we do with the sea-level engines. Next, we have SN87. And you may be already asking yourself, well, that doesn't seem all that noteworthy. You just said we're well above 100 right now. And while you are correct, I would counter by saying that this very engine has been tested on a booster. That's right, SN87 was spotted on Booster 19 by our field team in Starbase, meaning that it has technically been static fired on a flight vehicle, even if it may have been abrupt. Finally, SN140 was spotted on April 2nd. It's kind of insane how long these engines have actually been in production compared to how many we've seen so far. And fun fact, just 2 days after we spotted 140, SN138 was also picked up by our cameras. But keep in mind that these are just the Raptors that we've spotted. There are far likely tens more behind closed doors that have yet to see the outside world. And our cameras.
And just when I thought the past couple of weeks here couldn't get any busier for Raptor operations, the Raptor North Stand took center stage. As of releasing this episode, today, April 6th, a Raptor seemed a bit unhappy and ripped itself apart. We haven't seen a rut of this size in a while, so it was definitely a surprise. We'll be following along to see what follows the events from this evening as SpaceX teams organize.
Moving away from Raptors now, on March 23rd, that feels like so long ago now for some reason, we saw the shell that sleeves the Super Heavy Transfer Tube test tank removed once again. We've seen them installing and removing this shell many times now, but we still aren't totally sure why. The most we can do is observe with our 24/7 live stream cameras, which you can also watch right here on YouTube. Finally, on the 28th, 2 tanks arrived at the site that were previously at Massey's of all places. This isn't an uncommon occurrence and could be for one of 2 reasons. Number 1, the tanks were no longer needed at Massey's after Ship 36's mishap and the McGregor teams needed more storage. Or, SpaceX wants to test them to certify their integrity for other use. We believe that option 1 is the far more likely outcome here. Option 2 is highly unlikely in my opinion, but with SpaceX, anything is possible. And speaking of Massey's, would you believe me if I said that even Massey's didn't have enough happen for an episode? That's kind of unheard of. On March 23rd, the test tank B18.3 was rolled back to the ring yard after receiving some additional ring structures, now sporting 2 of 3 grid fin simulators as well. This is an important step for this test tank, as previously it didn't support any grid fin hardware at all. It is interesting to note the timing of the grid fin test hardware here being spotted after seeing a booster already being lifted multiple times at the launch site. This is, after all, the first time SpaceX is using the grid fins themselves as lift and catch points compared to previous generation booster design. But perhaps this is regarding flight loads under extreme circumstances. We're not sure. 2 days later, on March 25th, B18.3 was rolled to Massey's where it's waiting to be placed in the Super Crusher test cage after its modifications are complete. If we go back to the 23rd, one of the ship's static fire test stands was rolled out to Massey's, which we suspected to be for testing of new hardware. Remember, Ship 39 will be the first ship static fire using this stand since Ship 36 last June. As we expected, it was placed over the flame trench, and a few days later, we saw the purging of various lines. This ensures that everything that they can test without a ship being present is thoroughly run through. It's better to take the spare time that you have and test as much as you possibly can, rather than risk something happening when it matters most. Skipping around a little bit, on the night of April 3rd, this static fire stand returned to the production site, indicating that it's done testing until Ship 39 is ready and roll out for its static fire test campaign. Other hardware is on the move as well. The second static fire stand, which will serve ship cryogenic proof testing, was rolled out on March 29th. This time not for testing, but likely to guide the installation of the pedestals mounted on the bottom of the stand. As of recording this episode, the stand still remains at Massey's. Overall though, the testing we observed here is a good sign of the upcoming static fire campaign for Ship 39. So stay tuned to Starbase Live and catch all the events there. I know there wasn't a ton happening in the last couple of weeks, but keep in mind that these slower weeks still hold a lot of critical action being done before the bigger ticket items take the stage. However, we aren't too far away now from action picking back up before Flight 12. When do you think Booster 19 will return to Pad 2? How long until Ship 39 rolls out to Massey's for a static fire test? Will SpaceX make the timeline for Artemis 3? Let us know in the comments section down below. I'm Max Evans for NSF. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys later.